Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Full Potential Functioning, Optimizing Life by Updating the Way We Think, with career coach Bill Benson. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an Associate Director for Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA Alumni Affairs. In today's program, Bill will discuss the brain science behind problematic versus effective thinking and share ways of perspective shifting to optimize efficiency. Now, to start our program, I'm excited to introduce Bill Benson. Hi, Bill.
Hey.
Bill is a licensed psychotherapist, conflict resolution counselor, and career clarity negotiation coach. Bill pioneered the Mental Gym, a Los Angeles-based private practice specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy and positive psychology. He draws on 25 years of clinical knowledge and experience helping individuals and teams strengthen communication, enhance contribution, and increase productivity. Bill, thank you for being here with us today. I'll pass the program over to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Thursday to you all. Thank you for taking your lunch hour to share a little time with me. The name of the webinar today is Full Potential Functioning, Optimizing Our Lives by Updating the Way We Think. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, in modern society, we have to use our brains a little differently. So that's what I do for a living. I founded the Mental Gym in 2001, and I founded it as a way to improve access to mental health by changing and reframing the perception of therapy and therapists. In order to do that, I got a couple of licenses. I went back to school, got my advanced degree. I'm certified by the Board of Behavioral Sciences in California. But the idea behind the Mental Gym is that I really thought more people, I certainly benefited from being in therapy and then being trained in therapy. I witnessed a lot of that interaction and that method, and it really was helpful to me, and I wanted to share that with people. And so I wanted to remove the stigma. So I came up with a Mental Gym, and I really think that you hire me much like you hire a personal trainer at the gym. Your personal trainer helps you build physical muscle, and I help you build emotional muscle and resiliency. And in doing so, again, I'm a conversationalist, I'm a talking therapist. If you were to be my client, you would come in and for 45 minutes a week, we'd talk about your life and knock our heads together and collectively come up with hopefully some strategies to team up and tackle your challenges and achieve your goals. And I do that with individuals, I do that with couples. I also, part of my scope of practice is career counseling. So I do that if you're stuck in your career, want to change careers, want to pivot, want to pursue something that's more meaningful to you, I help you with that process. And then finally, I work with companies to help coworkers get along and to create a team sensibility at work. All right, so that's me. But today, let's talk about the landscape. So we're going to delve into the evolutionary aspects of our perceptions, emotions, and actions that affect brain function. Well, what the heck does that mean, right? Well, we're going to explore a couple of things. The first thing we're going to explore is how we can shift from an external focus of control, external locus of control, which is kind of the base way our brain functions, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. And then we're going to talk about shifting to an internal locus of control. We're going to use an analogy that our brains are computers, and that the computers need, just like your computer, your laptop, you have to do software updates, update the operating system. We have to do the same thing with our brains. Unfortunately, we get too busy and we don't think these ways. And again, therapy is a good way to do that. And then finally, we're going to explore some ways to do that through cognitive behavioral therapy and some cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. But starting about 2 million years ago, we developed. And then as we developed society and culture, we complicated it. And now, over the last 200 years, because of the Industrial Revolution and the technological revolution going on, we are at a bit of a tipping point on how to use the brain. Here is the dilemma. Our brains have evolved slowly over millions of years, and they were developed to keep us safe and protected so we could pass along our gene pool. And so we're geared towards scanning the horizon for incoming to make sure that we're safe, small, and invisible so that we can survive and perpetuate the species. Now, the issue is with culture and with the advances that we've made, we no longer are somewhere in the middle of the food chain. We're now at the top of the food chain, but our brain is still designed to look towards the horizon. So the challenge that we have in modern society is to update, again, the software so that we can use the brain more effectively for the challenges of today. So let's summarize the human brain development. It's essential to emphasize that the physical evolution of the human brain occurs slowly through genetic changes over a long period of time. So what that means is that the brain has not physically evolved that much in the thousands and thousands and thousands of years that we've been around, but rather civilization has influenced the way we use our brain. So the structure of our brain is still pretty basic. The way we use it has changed. Therefore, to avoid overwhelming our system, as societies become more complex, we must manage away from the ancient brain's physical tipping points by psychologically managing our mindsets. So it's almost like having a Model T in your head, Model T engine in your head, and we're asking it to go, 65 miles an hour because the speed limit has increased in life. And so there are ways to do that, but that explains a lot of the overwhelm that people experience in life. And so let's talk a little bit more about the tipping point. So the locus of control, I had mentioned that earlier. Locus of control is the degree to which individuals believe they have control over their lives, okay? So locus of control meaning there's an external one and there's an internal one. So the external locus of control, as I had mentioned, is more the basic, for lack of a better term, cave person way to look at the world. The instincts that external forces, fate, luck, circumstance control our outcomes. Therefore, our environments dictate our destinies. So again, our environments dictate how safe we are. Okay. The internal locus of control, which is the more modern way of thinking, is our understanding that our own decisions shape our reality. So how I perceive the environment shapes how successful I am. So that said, here's a little timeline, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of just step through a little bit of a perception exercise for you. So let's start with a little brain science. So I'm going to simplify here a little bit, but I love the brain, the way the brain works. I'm kind of a brain science geek. So the neocortex, or new neocortex brain, the new brain, is our thinking brain. The less instinctual brain, it's the more thinking brain. It's located in the frontal lobe of our skull, and it's the computer. Okay, so we have a computer in our head here, and then the amygdala, the feeling brain, is the oldest part of our brain, and it's located right by our brainstem, and it's the part of the limbic system, and that's the thing that secretes chemicals into our bloodstream. So what we think communicates with the amygdala, which then secretes chemicals. And then once the chemicals are in our system, or the hormones are in our system, then we have the energy to act or behave in certain ways. Let's say our thought is, I think there's a tiger chasing me. So that thought is going to interact with the amygdala, and the amygdala is going to secrete stress hormone, probably adrenaline, that was going to rage through our system and give us energy to run away, which is the action. Okay, this served us well in evolution when we weren't at the top of the food chain. But in today's society, there really are no tigers chasing us. We're pretty safe. In fact, historically, I think we're the safest we've ever been. And so instead of, part of what the work is changing our perception. So to internalize the locus of control. So instead of thinking, there's a tiger chasing me, I realized, oh, that's a kitty cat. And so because the kitty cat is not threatening, we're not going to get that secretion of stress hormone, and we're not going to put that stress hormone into our body. So then the feeling is perhaps one of pleasure. Perhaps we'll put some other kind of hormone in our system, a pleasurable hormone like oxytocin, for example, or norepinephrine, or one of those hormones, which gives us that sense of connection, and then the action would be to pet the kitty cat. So the general summary of locus of control is this: therefore, our perceptions, not our circumstances, best determine our success or failures in modern society. So why would we want to internalize our locus of control? Because individuals with a predominant internal locus of control tend to be more proactive and resilient. They have less obstacles in their life. They create less narratives of limitation and roadblocks. They also have increase in self-esteem and a decrease in stress levels because, again, they're not triggering that chemical release of those stress hormones because they perceive the world a little differently. Now, here's where cognitive therapy comes in. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps us detach from life's externals and develop an internal locus of control through creative methods of managing our thoughts and fostering a growth mindset. So here's a misconception that I get a lot, and I'm sure other therapists do as well. People think that therapists give advice. We don't give advice. My job is not to tell my clients how to think or behave. It's rather I offer my clients ways to become more aware of their thoughts, feelings, and actions so that they can better operate their own unique lives. I always say, it's not my life, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but what I can do, my job is to make you more aware so that you can maintain what's important to you and go after and have this as expansive a life as you want to have. So in order to do that, I thought it'd be fun to create this exercise. I like to envision the brain as a computer. So in order for it to work properly, you must update the software, like we've said. So we achieve this by realizing we are not the 3-pound tool in our heads. I think, therefore I am, Rene Descartes, and I believe the 17th century, kind of a misconception and even dangerous, because if we have approximately, I read a study the other day, we have approximately 50,000 thoughts a day. Can you imagine attaching to all those thoughts? So there is a hierarchy, right? And we have to determine what thought is appropriate for any given circumstance. So if we were letting every thought enter in and trigger us, we'd all be basket cases. So there has to be a way to choose what is appropriate for any given circumstance. And that's, again, where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. So how do we do that? So we're not the actual brain. That's the 3-pound brain in our head is a tool. We're this 160 pound, 170, 80, whatever it is, pound human being. And we're the electricity. Who we are is the electricity that runs the brain. Some people call that energy, some people call that God, some people call that whatever you want to call that. Presence. We are the electricity that runs the brain. So we control the system by detaching ourselves and gaining perspective, and then from there we can select what thought is appropriate for the given circumstance. I use another analogy sometimes that I would like to help people become the maestros of their thought orchestra. So there's a reason why the conductor sits about 10, 12 feet out from the orchestra, so he or she can have the perspective to signal what thoughts, which are the different instruments in the orchestra, play at what appropriate time. If all the instruments played at once, we just have this cacophony of noise. Same thing with our thinking. We can't think everything at once and attach to all the thinking at once. I developed this thing called the brain scan, and it's basically an XY graph. And so since your brain is a computer, computers crunch data, okay? So where's the data? Now, there's not a whole lot of data where the X and the Y intersect. That's called the present. There's not a whole lot going on right here and now. But there's a lot of data in our past. That's called our memory. And there's a lot of data in our future. That's called our imagination. Now, the problem with the past and the future is you can't do anything about what happened 5 minutes ago. It's already gone. And you can't do much about what's going to happen in 5 minutes, because unless you're clairvoyant, you're not going to know what's going to go on in 5 minutes. So the other thing that's challenging about the past and the future is they're subjective. So my view of the past might be a little skewed to what actually happened, and that's what we call spinning a narrative. So we have a story about ourselves, we tell ourselves, and a story about other people that we tell ourselves, and that sometimes limits us. And the future, again, the imagination is a very subjective thing based on who we perceive we are. So if we think the past, we think I should have very often. And that creates depression. In the future, what if creates anxiety. So let's pull in the y-axis of the XY graph. Where's the emotion? So the brain also scans the environment externally, and it compares, again, the external locus of control, scanning the horizon, and we compare how we're doing compared to other people or other things, or how much money we make, or what car we drive. And so we either think we're better than other people or we're not as good as other people. So what we do is we set up this narrative, this story about ourselves based on past, future, superior, and inferior. This is when the brain is taking over, because brains love stories. So I'm going to give a quick example here. So say in high school, so it's about the past, say I was really bad at athletics. In fact, perhaps I flunked PE, all right? So I can actually plot that. And if you look at quadrant A, B, C, and D, that would appear in quadrant C, because it's about the past and it's about being inferior. Now, if I never update that perception about myself, I'm going to drag it along, and I'm going to continue to feel unathletic and inferior in that regard. I'm going to drag it from the past to the present, and then in the future, I'm never going to join the gym because I don't want to humiliate myself. Now, your brain loves it. It's called identity, but the problem is it limits your life. So part of the process of counseling is questioning some of these perceptions and really verifying them to see, to understand where they come from, and then clean them out so that if somebody would like to be athletic but is afraid to, we can look at that and detach from those fearful subjective thoughts so that they can at least consider the possibility of doing something they'd like to do. Another example would be, say in the past, say in high school, I was super smart and I got great grades, but I was a little geeky and people made fun of me. And I as a defense mechanism to protect myself in high school, I became, maybe I got a really cutting sense of humor and became very sarcastic. So that would be about the past and about me feeling superior to other people because I would be smarter than the average bear. And so that would be in quadrant A. Now, if I don't update that perception, again, I'm going to drag it along with me and to the present day. And perhaps I'm not going to, it's going to become problematic because I'm not going to win friends and influence people. I'm not going to get promoted at work because my sarcasm makes it hard to work with other people, et cetera, et cetera. Again, identity, brains love it, but does it help you in the bigger picture? So really the key to this cognitive behavioral therapy intervention is to take the value judgment out of it. So I'm not better than you or I'm not worse than you. I'm the same as you or I'm different than you. I've got different viewpoints or the same viewpoints. I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican. I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. But it doesn't matter because they're thoughts, okay? So the one's not better than the other. They're just differences in opinion. And then if we can take the past out of it and the future out of it, then where happiness occurs, the target is to neutralize our judgment about ourselves and others, live in the present, not the past. Because again, the past is depression and the future is anxiety. So happiness is in the here and now, the moment. Now your brain, you've got to override your brain because your brain's going to want to take over and create those stories. But since you're the electricity that runs the computer, since you're the maestro that conducts the thought orchestra, you are in control, and that's the internal locus of control again. And the result of that, this is another way to show it, we have a balancing act between the rational self and the emotional self. And where they intersect, this obviously is a Venn diagram, is called balance and well-being, or in dialectic behavioral therapy terms, which is another modality, it's called wise mind. Here are some other summaries of popular CBT interventions, but cognitive restructuring, it's a core component of cognitive behavioral therapy, and much like the graph, it challenges irrational or negative thought patterns, and we learn to recognize these patterns and then reframe them, much as we did in the XY graph. And the way therapists often use techniques like thought records, where a thought pops up and you write it down, and then we give our clients a table of cognitive distortions, and it's a 10-point table of the different ways your brain thinks. And when you catch yourself doing something like all or nothing thinking, for example, then we know, oh, the brain took over, and I've got to again regain perspective, so I can say, well, is it really always this way? Am I always a loser? Or, you know, do I always have financial problems? Or, you know, no, about 90% of the time. Okay, so 10% of the time I don't. So what do I do during that 10% of the time? And how do I expand on that, right? Because we're trying to balance your life through thoughtfulness. Exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is an effective treatment for anxiety disorders, including phobias, excessive compulsive disorder. And it's a gradual exposure to the feared stimulus or situation. I remember working with a client once. We went to Mammoth. We went up to Mammoth, and this gentleman was afraid of heights and chairlifts. And so we actually strapped on skis, and we spent the whole session in the gondola. And what I did is I started, first of all, he didn't even want to get on, and it was, but what I did is, first of all, I showed him, I went up and down the mountain in the gondola as he waited for me. And then I gave him, it was back in the days of the Walkmans, or the iPods rather. So I gave him my iPods, and I had him select a good song that was a favorite song of his. And then I went on the gondola with him, and I asked him just to focus on the song even with his eyes closed. And then the next time I asked him to do it with his eyes open, and then the next time I asked him to do it without the music, and I was there the whole time. And I was a calming factor because I was someone who he knew and trusted, having been a client of mine. And then eventually, he got on by himself with the music first, and he went up and down, and then he took the music out, and he went up and down, and he was no longer afraid of gondolas and heights. So that's an example of exposure therapy. There are some really cool therapies going on that are relatively recent that deal with trauma. What we're finding is basically Bessel van der Kolk is a guy who's a researcher in trauma. He wrote a wonderful book called And the Body Keeps Score. I highly recommend it. What we're finding is everyone has trauma. Some of it is a bit more life-threatening than, some people experience a bit more life-threatening trauma than others, and that can be considered post-traumatic stress disorder, or even long-term post-traumatic stress disorder, which is slightly different, and the modality of treating it is slightly different. But we're coming up with all sorts of really wonderful trauma therapies, some of which are EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, as well as brain spotting. And there's different modalities. I do EMDR with my clients at times, and it's a way to help rid your trauma that's stuck in the vagal nerve of your body and release it. So there's also some body-based interventions we can do to help with people who have phobias and even obsessive compulsive disorder. Behavioral activation is basically, we call this activity scheduling, another word for it. So sometimes when you're depressed, oftentimes when you're depressed, you just don't want to do anything, you don't want to get out of bed. And so more or less forcing yourself through structure to get up and brush your teeth, get out to start your day, even if it's, finding something like a cup of coffee that helps motivate you to get out of bed. And then we can also do this without having a depression diagnosis. Like, for example, if you want to get into shape but you just are a bit allergic to the gym, then we have you make a contract with us to go to the gym and just touch the gym door, and you don't have to go inside the gym. That's how we start. So as long as you go, and if you are allergic to the actually working out process, as long as you get up and get your gym clothes on and head to the gym and touch the door, you are free and clear. You have no guilt. You can come home and not work out. And then obviously once you get to the gym, your mindset has shifted, and usually people enter the gym and they slowly begin working out. Another thing that's really important in this kind of resistant kind of client to things is finding meaning in life. People oftentimes confuse pleasure with happiness. In our society, we have a lot of social media influence, the Instagram, the photos on vacation. Everyone's, at the beach having tan and happy, and that's what we see. And that can be really challenging for people. And people really look forward to these activities, but the mistake they make is they think that creates happiness, and it doesn't. It creates pleasure. Pleasure is about escape, and happiness is the result of doing something meaningful. So oftentimes with depression, I find that clients don't have a focused meaning in their life, something that's really important to them. And if we can clarify and define what is meaningful to them, then we can get them into an action mode towards achieving those kind of things. Mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy is basically breathing exercises, meditation, anything that's going to help you get in the crosshairs of the XY graph in the moment and not judging yourself and others. And then there's problem-solving therapy, where we actually break down problems in a very clear-cut way, so that we can, like they say, a lot of people look at Mount Everest and say, I can never climb that, because they see the mountain. But if we take it one step at a time, then before you know it, if you keep stepping, then you're halfway up the mountain, right? Finally, social skills training is a way to, it's a kind of a combination of all the above. It's a way to help a client who might feel inhibited socially, usually because of the narratives in their head, like we showed in the XY graph. And so it's kind of cleaning out those perceptions and freeing yourself up to be in the moment and to be fluid and flexible. So that's kind of the evolutionary road that we took today. We explored the external versus the internal locus of control. We through the timeline of the tiger and the kitty, we showed how thoughts create feelings and feelings create actions. And then we saw the brain as a biological computer. And then we scanned our way into presence and non-judgment through the XY graph. And then finally, we talked a little bit about using therapy tools to create psychological awareness and to positively affect your life. I wanted to add one more thing, and that is a good test to know whether you're in an external locus of control versus an internal locus of control is if you can catch yourself. Again, my job is to make you more aware, right? So if you, through awareness, you can catch yourself proving, defending, promoting, or protecting, you're in an external locus of control. So if you're proving yourself to others, if you're defending yourself, if you're promoting yourself, if you're protecting yourself, that's all about trying to affect your environment, right? The focus of control is out there. If I can get that person to like me, I'll be okay. If I can get my parents to love me, I'll be okay. If I can make $200,000 a year, I'll be okay. And I'm not against, making $200,000 a year or having nice cars or having loving family. That's really wonderful, but it can't be the goal, because that's results oriented, and that's more about creating this pleasurable situation versus knowing that you can create something that keeps you stable and happy internally, and so wherever you go, there you are. So with that, This is me again, and we'll be happy to share the link to this presentation. And thank you for listening. We're right about, we're right about 22, so I think we have some time for some questions.
Bill, to start off, you shared some great information and tools on kind of shifting our perspective. One of the questions we got in our registration was, how can we remain optimistic and engaged amidst uncertainty? This person in particular shared examples of, cost of living and stagnating salaries. Any insights you could provide for this person?
Yeah, what comes to mind initially is I do an exercise with clients, and I call it the negative thesis statement exercise. And so I asked the client if in high school they remember the 5-paragraph essay in English class, and it's a way to support a thought, right? It's a way to create an argument around a thought. So the 5-paragraph essay, if you guys don't remember, if you all don't remember, is it's 5 paragraphs. The first paragraph is the introductory paragraph, and then the end of the introductory paragraph is a thesis statement. Let's just say the sky is blue, okay? And then you've got 3 paragraphs with topic sentences of different reasons why the sky is blue. Maybe the molecules vibrate at a certain frequency. Maybe the ocean and is reflected in the blue of the atmosphere, and maybe, so whatever it is that makes the sky blue. And then the concluding paragraph is, therefore the sky is blue. It's a way to prove a point. Now, our brains do the same thing. And unfortunately, what we have in that thesis statement at the very beginning, the last sentence of the introductory paragraph, if we extend the metaphor, is negative. So we have a negative thesis statement. Well, why is that? Well, when I was using the XY graph, most of our thinking usually is in quadrant C. It's, again, quadrant A is the past and I'm better than you. Quadrant B is the future, I'm better than you. Quadrant C is the past, I'm not as good as you. And quadrant D is the future, and I'm not as good as you. So why is it in quadrant C? Well, as kids, we weren't good enough. We needed help to survive. We needed a roof over our heads. We needed to please the surroundings to get fed and loved and all of that stuff. So because the brain likes to hold on to narratives about ourselves, like I said, we'll continue to carry a narrative along. And we do have the option to reframe that narrative and update it just like the software at any time, but we just don't do it because we just get distracted, especially nowadays with the hustle and bustle of modern society and the inundation of social media and being on and plugged in all the time. So we don't really think about that. Now, what's the problem with having a negative thesis statement? Well, the problem is your brain is like a police scanner. So it's going to scan your day to support that thesis statement. Just like the 5-paragraph essay, if I wanted to support reasons why the sky is blue, I'm going to find those and figure them out. Now, so if we have a negative thesis statement about our lives, we're going to police scan through our days and hang on to the negative things that happen to us. And there's positive things that happen to us and negative things happen to us. It's up and down. That's the way we are as human beings. We have good things, bad things happen to us throughout the day. But if we're trying to prove even subconsciously a negative thesis statement, we're going to hang on to those negative thoughts and create a story around them. And therefore, my life is in disorder. So through therapy, what I often recommend is stopping and redesigning the thesis statement and saying, okay, so how do I flip that thought? Is my life out of control, or are there certain things I can control? And then let's create a thesis statement around, hey, you know what? I'm in control a good amount of the time. So let's go out through my day and see what I can control or see what I am capable of doing versus fearing the wilderness with that external locus of control. It's not the events in life, it's how we perceive the events in life. And look, I want to be sensitive to people's station in life, and if you don't have enough money to pay the rent, I understand that's a big problem. Mm-hmm. But it's not helping you to worry about it or beat yourself up about it. We have to look at it as a problem to solve.
How do cultural narratives play into our ability to thrive versus hide?
So we do have our own identities, and our identities are who we are, and they are attached to our narratives. And I'm not against having narratives or identities, obviously. Now, how do we? I think the question really is, how do we harmonize and get along with our differences, right? So I think the approach there, and it might sound a little Pollyanna, and I don't mean it to, but if we can all look at ourselves as humans first and foremost, and then from there drop these negative stories we have about difference. So basically, prejudice and disharmony and pecking order is all based in fear. Our brain is designed to not if we don't understand it and it's not in our wheelhouse of experience, we're afraid of it. And so what we do is we often judge it as a way to protect ourselves, right? So, for example, judgment. Let's just, and I'm going to get a little bit away from the cultural aspects of this, but let's look at judgment. Judgment isn't a bad thing. I judged today that I decided to wear this color because I thought I looked good in it, right? So it's judgment based on experience and understanding is one thing. Judgment based on assumption and fear is called prejudice, prejudgment. So if I have a friend that is mean-spirited and I keep hanging out with them, then I'm turning a blind eye, and I should perhaps consider distancing myself from that person because I deserve to have a good, healthy existence and relationships that are healthy. So going back to the question at hand, cultures, whenever we think of culture, we have to consider, the key is education, but then you get resistance because of that Y graph, again, is that I'm better than you and that's a way for me to protect myself. Well, you're not really protecting yourself by, to use the analogy I used, if I've got sarcasm because I was teased in high school and I perpetuate that sarcasm, that's not going to help me expand and evolve as a human being. And I really think we, on this planet, the 80 or 90 years, hopefully, we have on the planet, it's a time and space for us to evolve and learn something. I really believe in that. So these ideas, these fixed sets of grouping people and assuming things, this all or nothing thinking, going back to the cognitive distortion chart I mentioned real briefly, these are things to look at and clean up so we can be as present and non-judgmental in a prejudicial way as possible.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move into some of the questions we've gotten from our live audience. And the first question is, do you think every thought eventually leads to an action if it's thought of for an extended period of time?
Yes. Now, interestingly enough, what I thought, and then I thought again, I said, well, wait a second. That's a really interesting question. So I think that if you think of something long enough, it almost, the power of it dissipates. And that's kind of around that flooding idea, right? So this, for example, my client who was afraid of heights, we flooded him to the point where that thought of, I'm afraid of the gondola, I'm afraid of heights, eventually dissipated because he thought of it, and then he started questioning the validity of it, and as a result, he was able to dial it down so that he could now enjoy a more expansive experience. So, I do think that thoughts create feelings and feelings create actions, but I also think that if you were to have an agenda or an intention of managing those thoughts and the value behind those thoughts or the story behind those thoughts and the validity of those thoughts, then thinking them can help you dissipate those.
Great. Then the next question we have is, can the emotional attachment to the present or future also be harmful in cases where you are either happy about the past or prosperous for the future?
Yeah, actually, that again, great question. So I think of the armchair quarterback, the guy that peaked in high school and he was the quarterback of the team, and he thinks of the glory days, and so he hangs out And by the way, I realize I'm being assumptive here, and if somebody's not like that and truly happy, I'm not trying to judge them. But the armchair quarterback he's 50 and he's still hanging out with the same crew from high school, and he's still living in the same town, and his whole career was based on who he was in high school. That can be a very pleasurable life, but not a very growth-oriented life. So it's somebody who doesn't expand in life. And I'm all for people expanding and having experience and evolving in the time we have here. So comfortable oftentimes means we're living in the past. So our brain, and I might have mentioned this, I believe I mentioned it, is the brain likes what's known. So the brain doesn't like what's unknown, but that's where the growth occurs, is the unknown. If we forge into the forest, that's how we expand our experience. If we're always relying on what we've already done, then we in essence are living in the past, because we're just perpetuating what's already occurred. As far as the second part of the question, does optimism towards the future create problems? I don't believe so, just top of my head, but I can see a problematic consideration that we might have to make, and that is if we set, this is why I hate the question when you ask a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so because little kids, again, they'd want everyone to be happy with them, so they're going to say what they think their parents want them to say. So I want to be a fireman. I'm 9 years old. Oh, I want to be a fireman. Well, so there it is. It said I'm going to be a fireman. So I get to be of age, and I graduate, and then I actually go to the fireman academy and firefighter academy, and I get my firefighter. And I get and I hate it, and I don't know what to do because I've done all this work, and now I'm a firefighter, but I hate it. So what happens? So these people end up in my office, whether they're doctors or lawyers or whatever it is. And even people that have made a lot of money, and as a result of that, they have that mortgage and the pool and the kids and the private school and all that stuff, and they feel kind of locked in. This is a version of midlife crisis, by the way, because so much of our life early on is about promoting and acquiring and proving, and so we get to be middle age, and sometimes now there's quarter life crisis even. We get to a certain age and we start questioning it. So if I said I was 9 years old, I said I was going to be a firefighter, and because the expectation was there, and I tell myself I'm therefore going to be a firefighter, I have the right to change my mind. So a lot of people walk into practice, they're doctors, lawyers, or firefighters, and I asked them, I said, when did you make that decision? And they said, when I was 9. I said, well, you're basically living your adult life based on the decision of a 9-year-old. So as a result, we need to update the software. We have to get present and say, hey, what is meaningful to me? Because again, like I said, meaningful leads to happy, right? And then usually, if it's meaningful and you're happy, then you do a lot of it, and you get really good at it. And if you get really good at a skill that really is meaningful to you, and you devote a portion of your life to it, you get really good at it. And then if you're visible, you get recognized for it, and then the money comes, or the influence comes, or what the power comes, or whatever it is, or you become an expert in your field, right? Or you inspire a lot of kids if you're a teacher. So whatever that good result is that supports the happiness comes from finding meaning and purpose.
Great. That's going to be our last question for today's session. Any final thoughts, Bill, before we wrap up?
What comes to mind is slow down. Slow down. So we're at such a frenetic pace, and everyone wants to get rich quick, and there's all these experiential weekends where learn how to sell real estate in 2 days, and how to be a millionaire, and result. Slow down. So I'll use an analogy. So say you're playing the piano, and you're playing a song and you can't get the chords right, so you got to slow the tempo of the song until you learn how to play the chords, get clarity on where the fingering is, and then you can eventually speed it back up. So when in doubt, slow down. A great way to create time and space for yourself to kind of meditate on what is meaningful to me. and try to get away from what your head thinks and more to what your heart thinks. What makes you well up? For me, it's animals. I'm a big animal advocate, and as a result, that's informed my life. I'm a vegetarian, and I've done animal-assisted therapy, and I was on the board of a organization that did therapeutic interventions using animals with kids in disadvantaged situations. And that's been really rewarding for me because I love animals. Now, if I was afraid of animals and did that, I would be setting myself up for some pretty severe misery. So slowing down and assessing what is meaningful to you, really important. So that's just one strategy, and I know it's a simple one. And yeah, there's all sorts of exercises designed to help you with that process. And I'd be happy to share those as well if you get a hold of me, and as well as the book list. But the first step, and I think the simplest, is slow down and be reflective of what is meaningful. Just know that there are people rooting for you. I feel really blessed to be in the position I am to help people and to root for them. And I really believe that love is the answer. Connection and love and well-being. And the old adage that hurt people, I really think that's true. I don't think that we're born evil. I don't think that I think people get damaged in life and then act out of that damage. Hurt people. So what I do for a living, and you certainly don't have to be a psychotherapist to do it, but I try to throw love at everybody. And I do that in a very selfish way because I know it makes me feel good, it's meaningful to me, and it makes me feel good. So if I can turn on my light bulb, first of all, you have to recognize you are a light bulb. And if you turn on the light bulb, the darkness goes away. You don't have to dive for the darkness. You don't have to change your environment. You just have to turn yourself on, and then the darkness goes away around you. And then you shine and other people recognize you and other light bulbs come, and then suddenly the light grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and then darkness goes away. So this internal locus of control, I think, is the key to everything.
Wonderful. Bill, thank you so much for being here with us today and providing your insights. It was great to have you. Everyone who tuned in, hope you were able to take something away from today's session. And if you're interested in hearing more from Bill on a monthly basis, like we mentioned, feel free to sign up for his monthly articles, as well as to get his slides for today's session. Bill, before we close, again, I want to thank you for being a part of this network and being a resource to our alumni community. Thank you for joining us today. Bill, again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And with that, go Bruins.
Go Bruins.